Keinemusik has to be one of the most popular trios in the genre of Afro House currently, so why not learn how to create their style? In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create this project. So let's dive in. We're going to start entirely from scratch, so you get to see the entire process, and therefore we're going to start off with the kick. And therefore I'm going to create a MIDI track, and in this MIDI track I'm going to load a kick from the upcoming Afro House pack, which is releasing this Friday. And usually you don't want to go for a very complicated kick. An 808 kick pretty much does the job. You can also find some of these 808 kicks within drums and the 808 core kit. Just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to load it underneath the kick right over here to show you a direct comparison between the kicks. I'm going to work with a 16 bar loop. So I'm going to loop this section up here, 16 bars. You know what? Let me dial that down to 8 bars. Let's hit Command-Shift-M to create a MIDI clip within the highlighted section. Right click, 4th bar, and then draw in that kick, preferably with the headphones turned on so we can hear it. Nice. We can select our 1 bar loop and loop it up so it repeats along this 8 bar MIDI clip. And right now you see I have an EQ8 loaded in by default, but I'm going to disable it on the kick because I want the bass in the kick. Nice. So this is our kick, and if we use the kick from the 808 core kit, I'm just going to option and drag and drop this clip down here, mute the first clip, and play the second one with the 808 kick. Already, like, the stock sounds are pretty cool from this 808 kick. Keinemusik uses a lot of these as well, and it sounds like this compared to the kick that we have from the pack. Quite similar, only that ours is a bit more tweaked. So you could also tweak the decay, the tone on this kick here. You could also layer it with a couple different transients and you can come up with your own Keinemusik-ish type kicks. But for now, I'm gonna mute this layer and use the kick that we've dragged in here. So these 808 based kicks that look somewhat like this do a very good job with this genre. Second most important elements are the toms. So therefore, again, we're going to create a MIDI clip and we're going to group this MIDI clip instantly into a group called toms. The reason I'm grouping this is because the toms usually consist of multiple layers. First layer being the high tom, and I'm going to look for a tom also from the Afro pack. And I'm paying attention to a sound that sounds rather high, right? Like it's a higher tom layer, not a subby tom layer, but a higher frequency tom. Like this one would be perfect. Let's drag and drop it here. And again, highlight this MIDI clip, this entire clip, and hit Command-Shift-M. There we go. And the first thing we're going to do is look for the placement, for the right placement of the tom. And preferably you want to work with either the 8th bar grid or the 16th bar grid, the fixed grid. You want to place your toms, your high toms, in between the kicks. So you want to play your kick pattern. Preferably dial down the tom track a bit. And just look for the right placement. You don't want to fill it out too much. You want to have a simple groove. So I kind of like it here, maybe here. Oh, you see, if it plays with the kick, it stacks. And you don't want the transients from your kick and the tom stacking on top of each other. That does not result in a nice sound. So let's drag it here. Nice. Let's duplicate this over and see if we can add maybe a just additional note here. Okay, sounds kind of cool. So I'm going to go with this and duplicate it over. You know what? Let me just take this and loop it up here. There we go. So the MIDI clip extends here to its entire length. This is how it sounds so far. Nice. So we have the high tom layer. Now we're going to duplicate this layer over here and call this one LO for low. And we're going to replace this higher tom sound with a lower one. And what you can do is right click the sound within the simpler here, show in browser, and it'll automatically open the folder which the sample is in. These are also great high tom sounds, but now we're looking for a tom hit that sounds rather subby, right? Like a sub frequency tom. Oh, this one's kind of cool. And now we want to put this one into one-shot mode so it actually plays until the end. And we want to change the placement of the toms. Again, so we don't want them to hit on the exact position as the high tom is playing. We want the position to be different. So what I'm going to do is just shift it with arrow right and pitch it down an octave. See how it sounds. Okay, so this is a bit too low. Let's pitch it back up, make it a bit louder. I feel like the tom is not the right sound. So let's continue to look for the right one. Let's go for this one. Now you want to really take your time with the placement on these individual toms and allow the drum groove to breathe. So what I'm going to do is delete all of these. There we go. So we got a dum dum. You can also zoom in here to see where your high tom is playing, and you can place your low tom accordingly between the high tom notes. Take this section over here, duplicate it over. Cool. And from this point on, when we have the placement right, we can work more on the sound selection. So we can always go back into hot swap mode and select the right tom sound. We're still in hot swap mode. Move the low cut here. This one's cool. Put it to one shot. Cool, and as soon as we finish the tom groove, we can add a filtered delay to the toms. This is something that Keinemusik does a lot. They use a lot of delay, but I find that filtered delay specifically works very well with toms. And if we put that on the group channel right here, it's getting there, it's getting there. It's just that this filtered delay creates a bit too much delay. And in some cases, this delay stacks with the kick, and we don't want that. So what you can do is load up a compressor after the delay. Audio effects, dynamics, compressor. Just load that in here. Open up this panel over here. Select sidechain, audio input from the kick. And when we dial down the threshold, you can see that whenever the kick hits, the tom is being reduced in volume. But then again, we want to make sure that we get the right delay times on the filter delay. You can see that the left and right channel, as well as left and right, are always split. You can determine the frequencies that are being input into the delay. And you can also determine the volume of each and every single individual channels, as well as the total dry signal. Maybe pan them less, because I feel like they're really, really far on the left and right. Now we're centering them more. If you crank this guy up, it really starts getting crazy. Yeah, we don't want that because that's too much clickiness, too many clicky artifacts. We usually want a very short feedback because we have a tom groove that is already very subby. We don't need all those transient and the subs really stacking. So keep the feedback somewhat low. Mess around with these parameters here. And what usually does the most is the delay time. Nice. And to add a bit more grit to the toms, you can also add a pedal right after the delay. You can try around these different presets. Or if you're not happy with the result that pedal gives you, you can also add overdrive. I feel like the interface is a bit simpler here. And you have more tonal control over how the sound actually sounds. If you want it to be rather higher frequency higher frequency-ish or lower frequency-ish, in 90% of the cases I have something that sounds like this, just to give it a bit more low end. And then you can also transpose the individual pitch of the toms. So whenever you're in one-shot mode, you can transpose over here. And on the other sound, on the high tom layer, you will need to go into controls because this one's in classic mode. We could also put it into one shot and transpose the sound here, but I'm going to stick with classic, controls, and you can see this transpose knob over here then. Ah. Then now I feel like both of these toms, the low tom layer and the high tom layer, they're harmonizing. They're not fighting with each other. So you want to make sure that you determine the right pitch over here or over here with both the low tom and the high tom layer, so they aren't dissonant, but they are harmonizing with each other, right? And it really matters to what pitch you set it to, so spend some time on that. And if you really want to go crazy, you can also stack these filter delays, like add another one on top. Or add a completely different type of delay here. So you can go into delay and add a delay right after your filter delay here. Maybe go ping pong. But then again, you need to be very cautious of the transients, because if you add delay to your signal, it will delay the entire signal, including the transients from the tom. And it starts getting very clicky, like the higher frequencies start inputting more into the delay. So you want to go into your EQ and maybe dampen out those higher frequencies a bit. You see, you hear those clicks? You usually don't want them to be that intense, so you just dial them down a bit here. Yeah. And I feel like the second tom hit isn't really playing where I want it to play, especially with the delay, so I'm just going to adjust it additionally. There we go. So again, pay attention to the placement of the tom and the pitch. Those are the most important aspects when it comes to creating tom grooves, and you really want to spend time on these tom grooves because Keinemusik style really depends on them. After the toms, we're going to create a new MIDI track and group this MIDI track again. And we're going to call this one Shaker Tight. And we're going to call this one Shakers. So the Shaker Tight's going to play a very static groove. And within this MIDI track, we're going to load up a shaker sound. You can also load up hi-hat sounds, but I find shakers to be a bit better because they have an attack. They have a slope at the beginning. Something like this. Just make sure that it's in classic mode. You could also put it into one-shot mode, but I feel like you have a bit more control in classic mode on the simpler here. So what we're going to do is, again, highlight this entire section over here, Command-Shift-M, stick with C3 because that's original pitch, right-click, make sure 16th is on, and go for that 16th groove. And what we're going to do is loop it up a couple times, maybe to around bar 3. Yeah, something like that. So we have 2 bars of this shaker, and we can just open up this velocity panel over here and start messing around with the individual velocity hits. Create a bit of a groove, right? And really doesn't matter. You can also take one section here and duplicate it over, but I'm a fan of adding a lot of variation to the velocity so it never sounds the same. Some play lower velocities, some higher ones, because it does add to the human feel if you have different velocities. Then we're going to take this section and loop it up. See, some notes are being played very high, some go lower. But honestly, I want it to loop up here, so I'm going to duplicate this over. And if you go into controls and dial up this guy over here, you will hear the differences between higher and lower velocities even more. So you intensify those velocities. But we're going to keep it rather soft. You see, if we put it to 0, no velocity changes at all. But if we put it to 100, it really intensifies the difference in velocity. Cool, so we want to do a bit of shaping here. Reduce sustain to -infinity, drag down decay slightly. You can also select the right start position. So this, again, too harsh, too much of a hi-hat. This, rather soft, shaker. That's what we want. Let's go to controls, random pan, crank that up so the sample pans. You can also detune it a bit. If you automate the detune, that always works quite well. I'm going to add an LFO, and you can usually find this in the Max for Life Essentials, I believe. I'm going to map this to the detune. Bit less depth. Higher rate, perhaps. All right, so every hit feels different. You can also add a pitch envelope here. That's not what I'm looking for, though. Nice. If you don't want to do it this way with the LFO, you can also delete it and simply do it over here. So this is basically also an LFO, and if you crank up this pitch, it'll change the pitch. Just got to increase the rate over here, maybe set it to notes. Also, let's change the panning, volume, filter. You can also change the curve. I'm pretty happy with this though. And on this shaker, this tight shaker, we're going to add a reverb. Or you know what? Let me add this reverb to the shakers group because we're going to add another one in a second. Going to emphasize those higher frequencies here, add a low cut and dial down the decay to around 300 and dial down the dry wet. Exaggerate a bit more. So we're going to dial down the decay until we barely hear the reverb. Perfect. All right, and for the shaker loose layer, we're going to create an audio track. Call this one shaker loose. And there's a variety of different options that you can choose for loose shakers. I prefer using loops because it's a bit of a quicker solution. You can also record in your own shakers. And if you'd like to watch a video on how to do that, you can watch this video up here. So I have a couple loops in the Afro pack that are loose. And you really want to pay attention to the emphasis groove. Right, so this one sounds pretty good from the start. If we pan it to the left, it sounds like this. You can also duplicate the shaker loose layer and choose another sample, like this one. Pan it to the right. This one sounds kind of too loose, so what I'm going to do is select a certain loop, maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4 of these 16th grids. Scroll through the sound. But it's not the right sample to use, so what I'm going to do is double click and drag in loops into this section over here. Maybe change it to this guy over here. Forward transients, dial down the amount. Hit Command-Shift-U to quantize. Underneath the shakers, we're now going to create a new MIDI track and call this one Perk, because we're going to insert some percussions in here. And we usually want to work with rimshot sounds also based on the 808 chord kit. So again, you could find sounds that sound similar to the rimshot included in here. So this would be the kick. See, this rimshot here is a really good one to use. Like this one, I'm going to drag and drop it here, highlight the entire section and create a MIDI clip again. C3, root note, and dial down the volume, hit play on the entire track. And now you want to place this more regularly, right? Gonna have to spend a bit more time placing these sounds. We want to get the placement right first, right? Maybe like that. And now we can also select all of these guys and hit randomize on the velocity. You can customize the velocity here. And what you can then do is slightly shift the position of each and every single one of these little rim shots to add a bit more of an organic vibe, right? So we don't want to always have them play on grid. So it sounds more human, right? Highlight this section, duplicate it over, maybe add a bit more velocity in the second half, and then again, take all of these, loop them up. And for these percussions, we can also add another filter delay. So filter delay, just add a touch here. I want the original signal to come in more than the delays. There we go, son. So now I'm going to group this percussion into a new group. Call it Perk GRP. Let's duplicate the second layer, and I'm going to look for a different percussion that I could perhaps use as a layer or as an additional group. So I'm going to call this one Rim, and this one we're going to leave it at Perk. Right click, show in browser. Maybe put it in here like a clave sound. like this. And for the second layer, we can perhaps increase the delay times on the filter delay. And what I always love doing with the second percussion layer is adding resonances. To emphasize a certain note a bit more. Preferably one that harmonizes with the rest of the drums. Ooh, dial it down a bit. And let's go for a pedal again. Pedal or overdrive I find to work best. Put in enhance, the enhance preset right here. Just give it a bit of distortion, right? Cool. Got ourselves a tight groove here. And once I have all of the drums ready, I group those up into a new group, call them drums total. And to get a bit more of that tight sound, we can add a drum bus. I'm going to add a drum bus on the group channel here. And to turn on that comp, you're going to have to make sure that it's not too loud. So right from the start, I'm going to dial it down here. And you don't want this drum bus to be adding any additional volume. You just want it to add a bit of compression, tightness, and crunch to the entire drum groove. So what we're going to do is do some A/B comparing. So let's turn off the drum bus. Pay attention to how loud the drum groove is and which elements are in the foreground, which ones are in the background. I feel like the kick is pretty loud, the toms, and that one percussion sound. Dum 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 dum. If we turn on the drum bus, kick becomes even louder, toms become even louder. Usually you don't want to have that dampen on because it takes away too many high frequencies. You want to leave those shakers in. The compression does a lot here. Can be quite dangerous to use sometimes though. Like I feel like it emphasizes the kick too much, so I'm gonna dial it down here. And the tom, I'm gonna dial it down a bit too. So you could either regulate using the output meter here or the trim over here. It does the same. Look at the difference. Again, you don't want it to feel louder than it was before. Yeah, the compression's doing 90% here. Add a bit of drive. Maybe just like 2% of crunch. I feel like this guy's doing too much though. Let's dial him down. Nice. And I'm going to adjust the kick just a bit. So I'm going to turn on the EQ that I have on the channel, disable the low cut, and maybe just add a bit of that low end boost. See the frequency that's peaking here? Boost it up by like 3 dB to 4 dB. And as a way to compensate for the boost, I'm going to have to take out the frequencies here. And then scale. Yeah, switch around like this. You can test out if you want to use more bass, more low end, or more mid-range this way. Cool little EQ trip. Trick. Tip. Oh my gosh. So you want to spend some time on your drums, really. The drums make up so much of the style, so much of the character of this type of genre. Then we're going to create a MIDI track and move on to the melodics. So I'm going to group this guy here. Call this one mellow. Make him blue because my melodies are blue. And you know what? I'm going to start off with the chords. I'm going to go for a really simple chord pad, and therefore I'm going to load up the Diva preset that is included within the Afro pack, or one of the Diva presets that's included there. I'm going to load up Diva here, my favorite analog synth, Afro, and go through a couple of the pad sounds that I like. So let's go for this Tim Green pad. Command-Shift-M, right, to create a MIDI clip. And now I'm going to create those pads. Simple pads are more than enough. Make sure to dial them down and double click. Let's enable our scale. Not really necessary. I'm just doing it for the sake of visual demonstration. Let's go for A minor, one of my favorite scales. And let's draw in some notes. So A, this is the minor, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's the A minor chord. And let's make sure to play this until the end. Legato, you can do also with legato. Maybe just add a few notes here and there, like this. Dial down the cutoff frequency. Son, it doesn't need to be complicated. Simplicity rules. Yeah, just a simple A minor chord with a few notes added on top. Gives you really that minor vibe. You could also use a ton of the presets that come with Ableton instruments. Type in pad here. And wavetable usually gives you the best ones here. These are really good. Also here, pad. Look how many sounds. Amazing. I'm gonna add a bit of echo to the pad to make it a bit more ambient. Increase the feedback, ping pong, reverb. Nice. Heavenly. I love it. Yeah, I'm enjoying this. Nice. What else can I add? So underneath the chords track, we're going to create a new MIDI track and look for a pluck sound. And again, I'm going to use one from the Afro pack, a Diva preset. There's one that I like. It's called Pluck 5 Classic Afro Rave Pluck. Gonna dial it down here, and you just want to play the tonic, the root note of your track. So that's A. I decided to go for A minor, so place that note a couple times. Something that Keinemusik does a lot as well. And duplicate this over here. There we go. Add an echo on top. Modulate the notes. See? You can also add some grain delay. Make it really weird. Spray. Yeah. Really weird sounds with grain delay. And something you can do as well is create melodic textures or melodic floor sounds. And if you'd like to watch a video on that, you could watch this video up here somewhere. So what we're going to do is load up a sample into our audio track over here, preferably one that is loop based. Okay, so this one's in A minor, right? Suits the key of our track or fits the key of our track. Now load it in, dial down the volume, and look for a loop. So 1, 2, 3, 4 16ths. Vibe instantly. You can also switch through the sound here. Alright, so this is more of like a Cafe de Anatolia type Afro house all of a sudden. Really chill. So it gives a bit of texture. You can also dial these down, make them more backgroundy. And chords, you can also add some from the Afro pack. I've included a lot of those as well. For example, this. Chord number 9, I've made sure to include all of the MIDI files from every single chord and song starter. Basically every single MIDI is in here. Chord number 9, let's search for that here. Place it underneath so you get to see and dissect the MIDI. For example, this one is in A minor, as you can see here. You can really see how the chords are voiced, where they are placed. And for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to keep it quite short here. If you'd like to watch a video on chords, you can watch this one. Got a link to our different videos here today. I use a lot of Contact for piano sounds, but Ableton Live has this one, piano sound and instruments, simpler, piano and keys, grand piano. Load it up here. See? More than enough, right? Duplicate this entire loop here. This is more of an emotional track that we're going for, right? Yeah. Add a lot more reverb. So this would be more of like a black coffee vibe that we're getting right now. And if we want to make it more black coffee style, what we could do is also add some kind of an African vocal that is also included in Afro. A minor, you can see a ton of these over here. Let's create a new audio track and simply drag and drop one of these over here, for example. Dial it down, of course. Make sure that BPM is set correctly because Ableton doesn't always get it right from the first try. Click warp twice. Make sure the BPM is set to the original BPM of the vocal, 120. Perfect. Nice. Switch through samples until you find the right one that fits the vibe of your current chord progression and the track. And also make sure that the warp mode is Complex Pro. Just switch through samples until you find the right one again. Warp twice, Complex Pro. You get the vibe, you get the idea. I'm going to take it out for now though. And last but not least, we're going to add a few little ear candy sounds in this audio track over here. And you can find a couple of those in the drums. One shots, drum fills, there we go. Like this. Add it maybe towards the end, just like here. Thank you so much for watching this video. You can grab this project file entirely for free using the link down below. Also, the Afro sound pack is coming out this Friday alongside with a full 3.5-hour video masterclass featuring how I create one of these Afro house tracks. So stay tuned for that one as well. See you in the next one. Peace.